Alrighty, so it's time to do part 2 of the preview for these midweek games. As yesterday we look at the first 6 games, and I'll leave a link in the description in terms of the first part of the preview, which includes the game that's going to kick off in about an hour at this time of the recording between the San Jose Earthquakes versus Orlando City. But now we're going to look at the last 7 games that's going to be happening on Wednesday and the last 7 game of the midweek action of match week number 9. And we start off with Montreal. They are going to be taking on DC United in this game, as this game will start at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific time, but the actual kickoff will not start until 8:08 p.m. local time. Montreal, of course, they were the only team not in action during the weekend's action, and that they were the recipient of the bye week sweepstake, although, as I mentioned, it's technically not a bye week for Montreal because, they do still have a midweek game, although they are the team that has the longest break out of anybody in the league, and that it's been almost 3.5 weeks since Montreal last played an MLS game. While for DC United, they have been in red-hot form in the last couple of games. They have won 3 in a row, and they have got themselves where, for the majority part of the season, they were sitting in the basement of the East, but now they're all the way up to 6th place in the Eastern Conference and have a 4-0-5 record. Now, in terms of the last 5 head-to-head matchup, it's kind of a hit and miss in terms of these last 5 head-to-head matchup in terms of who actually is going to win the game, because the last matchup, it was a 3-2 win in favor of Montreal before Montreal did win 1-0 against DC United. Then DC won 3-0 on the road against Montreal before it was a 0-0 draw between both of these teams, and then it was a 5-0 win that DC United play against Montreal. Now, what's key about this game is this is also a game that is kind of a rematch of last year's decision day, where I talked about last year that this was the game that was going to really decide who, of course, make it to the playoffs. And, of course, Montreal was able to get that crucial 3-2 win to sneak into the playoffs. So, certainly, DC, they probably have not forgotten about that, and they definitely want some revenge. And especially, Hernan Lassard, the team, has just been red hot in these last couple of games, and you kind of started to feel like he's started to figure out this team a little bit, and they're starting to get wins in the category. While for Montreal, they still are doing okay right now, but there's been times where Wilfred Nancy's side has been kind of inconsistent, although the one thing that they are still struggling right now is mostly creating chances, and hence that's why when you see the goal scoring for them in the last couple of games, it has not been good whatsoever. So, yeah, they certainly would like to turn that around in this game, but obviously if you look at in terms of form, I think DC United is the one that not only is better in terms of their recent form, but maybe the ones that potentially could win this one. But now, moving on, in terms of next match, is the Dynamo. So they are going to be playing against the Portland Timbers in this game. So Houston, they have a record of 3-3-3, while the Portland Timbers have a record of 4-0-4. This game will start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff will not start until 7:38 p.m. local time. The Dynamo, they are unbeaten at home this season, which shouldn't surprise anybody because they are a team that is always tough to beat at home, and they make BBVA Compass Stadium usually a fortress. While for the Timbers, despite the fact that they are injured to hell and that they have also a couple of players on international duty playing for their team in Copa America, they still were able to win 2-1 against Sporting KC at home. Now, in terms of the last 5 head-to-head matchup, well, the Timbers have won the last 3 meetings, but the last 3 meetings did happen at Providence Park. It was a 2-1 win that the Timbers had against the Dynamo earlier this season. Then it was another 2-1 win that the Timbers had last year, and then it was a 4-1 win that Portland put against the Dynamo, before it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams last time that this game was taking place at BBVA Compass Stadium, and then the Dynamo did win 4-1 against the Timbers in the prior meeting. So, as I said, if this game is taking place at BBVA Compass Stadium, most likely the Dynamo probably is going to get something out of it. And I think, when you look at this match, I think they might have an edge in terms of the fact that, as much as the Timbers are showing a lot of resiliency and still are able to get points, despite the fact that they have just a long list of players that is currently on the IR, and also they still started to get a couple of guys back healthy into this team. The fact that when you don't have a lot of players on the injury list, and that you're basically forced to play your reserve pretty much every single game, and knowing the fact that this is the second game of a 3-day stretch, and the Timbers, like many teams, are going to go through a stretch where they're going to have 3 games in 7 days. And not only the fact that this is a game that's going to be taking place in Houston, where it's going to be hot and humid during this game, you wonder whether or not if the fatigue is going to take a toll on this Timbers team. And especially, I thought the last game was kind of also a bit of an emotional win for them, because, you know, in a game that they were kind of the underdog against Sporting KC and maybe weren't expected to win against a red-hot SKC team, they were able to do it and also define what they did last season, which is able to hold on to a lead in the night throughout the 90 minutes. You wonder, is that going to be a letdown coming into this game, especially with a short rest and playing in just, again, a very hot, should be a very hot and humid night in Houston in this one. But we shall see if that's going to be the case, as we're now going to be moving on into the next game. And speaking of Sporting KC, they are going to be playing against the Rapids at home in this game. So they have a record Sporting KC has a record of 5-2-3, while the Rapids have a record of 5-1-2. Colorado is one of the hottest team right now in MLS. In fact, I think they are the hottest team right now in MLS, because in their last 6 games, they won 5 of them. While for Sporting KC, who were one of the hottest team in MLS coming into that game against the Portland Timbers, they unfortunately lost that one and lost 2-1 against them, and that, as I mentioned, that does down the record to 5-2-3. While, as I mentioned, Colorado won 5 out of their last 6 games, including the last game against who did they win in the last game? Well, I'm having a brain fart moment, forgetting who they actually beat in the last one, but they of course improved their record to 5-1-2. And this game will start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific time, but the actual kickoff time will not start until 7:30, 8 p.m. local time. Oh, FC Cincinnati is the team that they, of course, beat last time. The Rapids, of course, won 2-0 on the road against FC Cincinnati. In terms of the last 5 head-to-head matchup, well, the last meeting between both of these teams were not close whatsoever. It was a 4-0 win that Sporting KC got against the Rapids. Before, it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. Then SKC was able to win 3-2 against the Rapids. I believe that was during the MLS's back tournament. Then the Rapids did win on the road against Sporting KC 3-2, while it was a 1-1 draw between both of these team at Dick's Sporting Goods Park. But yeah, you know, coming into this game, this is going to be one that's going to be tough to call, knowing the fact that I'm pretty sure SKC are not happy about that last game against the Timbers, where I thought for majority part of the game they were the better team, and they just could not quite find an equalizer late in the game, despite trying to press to get one against the Timbers. While for Colorado, as I mentioned, they are right now one of the hottest team right now in the league. I mean, the only loss that they've suffered so far during this hot stretch was against LAFC on the road. But, you know, it's not going to be easy going to Kansas City and going to Children's Mercy Park to get a result. One of the toughest place to get free points. But we shall see whether or not if the good run that they've been in could use that as a momentum for them to get a win in this one. But now moving on, in terms of the next match, is going to be Toronto taking on Nashville SC. So this is the rematch of the Eastern Conference first round matchup. And by the way, that matchup was actually the first time that both of these teams met against each other, which I don't recall there's ever been a head-to-head meeting between two MLS teams, and that their first ever meeting is basically in the playoffs. Like, usually the only time that might happen is maybe in MLS Cup, but, you know, that was kind of strange, the fact that both of these teams, and especially both of these teams, were in the same conference, and that in the playoffs, that's the first ever meeting between both of them. But obviously, you know, it was a good memories if you're a Nashville SC fan, because, you know, they of course won that won 1-0. But recently, in terms of this season, you know, this season has been an okay season for Nashville SC, although, you know, in the last game, they unfortunately suffered their first loss of the season against the Red Bulls, as they lost 2-0 in that game to drop their record to now 2-5-1. While for TFC, they, of course, have been struggling this season, lost 3-2 at home against Orlando City, and now their record is 1-2-5. And this game will start at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, 5:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff will not start until 7:38 p.m. local time. And as I mentioned, the only meeting was that Eastern Conference first round matchup where Nashville SC was able to win 1-0 in extra time against TFC and knock out TFC in that playoff game. But yeah, obviously I know Toronto would love to have some revenge in this game, but also they would definitely want to get a win in this one. I mean, as I said, it's been a rough stretch that TFC has been going through. Now, the good news is they are starting to get a little bit healthy. And I thought in the last game, in that defeat against Orlando City, I didn't think they played bad in that game. I mean, the only bad thing that was in that game was that, their goalkeeping was pretty much non-existent. And something tells me Bono is probably going to be back in net in this one. And also the same goes with their defense. I mean, their defense was pretty much non-existent in the last one. But at least the attack in this team is getting better, which is one of the things that they've been struggling so far this season. But it's not going to be easy to trying to basically get some goals or do well on the attack. I mean, they probably need to be at their best because they're about to play against a team that is one of, if not the hardest team to try to break down. And I have a feeling for Nashville SC. I know their formula in the last game, which is just sit back and hope to try to get a counter and suffocate the opposition, didn't really quite work out, but I'm pretty sure Gary Smith is going to do it again, although I think they're not going to do it as extreme as they did last game, because at least they know that they're going to be at home in this game, and they're going to trying to once again make life tough for TFC, but also try to take advantage of this TFC defense that has not been very good so far this season. But now moving on in terms of the next match, and we're getting into some of the West Coast games now, which is the Seattle Sounders versus RSL, as this game will start at 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff time will not start until 7:08 p.m. local time. The Sounders, they are the last man standing in terms of the unbeaten club, as after Nashville SC suffered their first loss against the Red Bulls over the weekend, and Seattle was able to win against the Galaxy over the weekend too. They're now the only team to have yet to lose this season, with a record of 6-3-0, and also have the best record and the best point total out of any team right now in MLS. And they're going to be playing against an RSL team that got a much needed win in the last game by winning 3-1 against the Vancouver Whitecaps at home to improve their record to 3-3-1. Although coming into this match, yeah, RSL is going to have a lot to do in order to beat against the Sounders, because when you look at the last 5 head-to-head meeting, the Sounders were able to win 2-1 against RSL. Then it was a 2-2 draw between both of these teams at Rio Tinto Stadium, but then the Sounders did win 2-0 against RSL. RSL did win 3-0 against the Sounders, but again, this was at Rio Tinto Stadium, and this was also a game when the Sounders was actually short-handed, and it was like doing an international break. But then the Sounders, of course, won 1-0 against RSL. And overall, when you look at the record, whenever RSL have to play against the Sounders at Lumen's Field, yeah, they do not have a good record against them. And quite frankly, nobody has a good record against the Seattle Sounders whenever they have to play against them on the road. Like, Lumen's Field is really the toughest place to gets points, and this is where away teams dream to trying to at least salvage a point, or maybe even get all 3 points, basically just gone to the waste. And especially how good the Sounders has been this season. And in the last game against the Galaxy, while it wasn't a vintage Sounders performance, they did get themselves back to the winning category, and just kind of reminds everybody that that kind of blip that we gone through before this 3-week break where we draw back-to-back games at home. Yeah, that was just a blip. We're now back to being our best right now, and we're going to not only continue to score goals to win games, but we're also going to use many different methods in terms, especially our defense, that is just going to make a living hell out of you. And that, I talk about Nashville SC having one of the toughest defense to break down. I think Seattle has the toughest defense to break down, because this team is also the only team to have yet to concede an open play goal this season. I mean, it's kind of remarkable, the fact that this is the 10th game of the season for the Sounders, and they still have not allowed a goal from open play. Like, all the goals that they've conceded has either came from the free kick or from the penalty spot. And, eventually I know that streak is going to come to an end, but it's still kind of remarkable, the fact that they play 9 games so far this season, and yet they still have not conceded an open play goal. Like, that has to be a record, or some sense. I don't think there's any team has gone through that of a stretch to not concede an open play goal. But now moving on into the last game on this board is going to be the Galaxy taking on the Vancouver Whitecaps. So for the Whitecaps, yeah, it has been a free fall in these last couple of games because they, I think right now currently have the longest losing streak in the league as they have lost 4 in a row and their record is now dropped to 2-1-5. While for the Galaxy, they did lose 2-1 against the Seattle Sounders at home to drop their record to 5-0-3. But the good news is the Galaxy, they are still in a prime position in the playoffs, and they actually dropped down to 4th place in the Western Conference, but they can of course get a win in this game. They can, and maybe if Colorado does lose against Sporting KC, they can get themselves right back up to 3rd place. Now this game will start at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff time of this game is going to be a late one at Rio Tinto Stadium, 8:38 p.m. local time, and this is also the first time that a Whitecaps game is going to have fans in the stands, as they announced a couple of weeks ago that they are going to be opening up the stands up to 2,000 fans that is going to be attending this game. Now, I'm not quite sure how many people are going to be there, and especially I'm not quite sure if there's any Whitecaps fans are going to be there in the stands. I mean, if they are going to make their way in this game, then I definitely salute them, although I'm pretty sure there probably are some that, knowing the fact that the Whitecaps just play against RSL at Rio Tinto Stadium, some of those fans might have just decided to stay at Salt Lake City for a bit because, their next game is literally at the same place that they play technically their road game in the last one. But, we'll see how many fans probably are going to go and going to attend this. Also, don't be surprised, maybe Galaxy fans are going to take over the stands because Galaxy fans are one of the more well-traveled supporter in this league, and that's also kind of one of the things that if you're the Vancouver Whitecaps, I'm not quite sure if this was their decision to invite some fans in the stands, but you're also asking basically either the away fans to just kind of take over the stadium, or the fact that you're just going to ask some neutral fans that probably is not going to even support you, and especially for Vancouver, because they're a Canadian team, it's going to be really tough to try to ask some of your fans to come down to the U.S., especially, with the border restriction still being very, very strict right now. So it'll be very interesting to see how many Whitecaps fans are going to be there and how it's pretty much going to be. This is going to be a game that's going to be dominated by Galaxy fans, and the Whitecaps are probably going to act this like it's another road game for them. Now, speaking of the Galaxy, or actually speaking of them and the head-to-head matchup, well, the Galaxy, surprisingly, they have not had a good record against the Whitecaps in the last couple of head-to-head. Like, you would think the Galaxy would have a good record against them, but, the last meeting, they lost 3-0 against them, and then they did win 1-0 against the Whitecaps at home, but then they lost 1-0 against the Whitecaps at home before losing 4-3 against the Whitecaps at home, before the Whitecaps did lose 2-0 against the Galaxy. And I guess maybe because this is a road game for the Galaxy, and knowing the fact that they don't do well against the Whitecaps at home, at least in these last 2 years, maybe that they'll be thankful and hope that maybe they can, of course, get all 3 points in this game. In fact, I think they should get all 3 points into the game because, again, the Whitecaps, they have really been struggling in these last 4 games. And remember how when in the first 3 game of the season, when they were basically have a record of 2-1-1, and I said, well, it seems like progress is starting to make in this long rebuild that the Whitecaps are going through. Yeah, no, it seems like it's heading the wrong direction again, and it's just getting to a point where the longer this losing streak is going to continue, I just wonder, is there going to be some changes in terms of personnel or even people in the front office, because this has just not been a season that the Whitecaps are hoping after, last season they just missed out on potentially making the playoffs for the first time since 2017. But that being said, I am now going to switch board and look at the last game that is going to be taking place in terms of the midweek action of match week number 9. So speaking of a team that is not having the season that they envisioned, that is the case for both of these teams between LAFC and FC Dallas, that they're going to be facing off against each other for the last game of the midweek action of match week number 9. And, we are now a quarter into the season, and I don't think it's not appropriate to say that it's kind of a must-win situation for some of these teams that is clearly underachieving, and that I think for both of these teams, they are definitely desperate to try to get a win. And you could maybe even say that this is a must-win for LAFC. Like, there is just no excuse that if they do drop points or even lose this game against FC Dallas, I really think that there should be some panic button that is going to be smashing in terms of this LAFC fan base, because right now they have a record of 2-3-3, and then they've only won once since that opening weekend win against Austin FC, and that was against the Rapids a couple of weeks ago. Well, for Dallas, they haven't won a game since the second game of the season against the Portland Timbers at home, and that they are now in a 6-game winless run, and I think they currently have the longest winless run out of any team right now in MLS. Now, this game will start at 10:30 p.m. Eastern, 7:30 p.m. Pacific, but the actual kickoff time will be 7:38 p.m. local time. And in terms of the head-to-head meeting, well, there's only been 4 prior head-to-head meetings between both of these teams, and surprisingly, Dallas actually have a decent record against LAFC. I mean, I was thinking when I look at the head-to-head, I thought LAFC was going to pretty much win every single meeting in the prior head-to-head meeting between both of these teams, but that is not the case. In fact, the last one, it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. Now, LAFC did win 2-0 against FC Dallas, but that's the only time that they were able to get a victory against FC Dallas, because the previous meeting, it was Dallas winning 2-1 against LAFC at Frisco before it was a 1-1 draw between both of these teams. That was the first meeting between both of these teams, but obviously, I'm pretty sure a draw will not satisfy both of these teams. Well, maybe it will satisfy Dallas because, points on the road has always been tough to come by in these last couple of seasons, but that definitely does not satisfy LAFC. Like, if the LAFC is going to do something similar to what they did with the other Texas team just a couple of days ago against the Dynamo, dropping points at home against a team that historically have not been doing very well on the road and haven't even got a single point on the road up to that point. If LAFC did the same thing against Dallas, I think there is definitely some panic button that need to be smashed, and that there's definitely I've see some real concern. Well, there's already real concern right now with this team. I mean, I know the media is still trying to make some excuses, and I also did look at the power rankings of this week, and I'm gonna try my best to not complain about it, but I can definitely see why that the power rankings is a good reason why this media is trying to find any other excuse that they can come up with on why LAFC is off to a slow start to this season. But again, they need to win this game. I mean, this is a game that if they don't win this one, there's definitely some real concern. There's a real possibility that this team might not even make the playoffs. I mean, I know if some would say that this might be a slow start that that LAFC is enduring, and you would say eventually they're gonna turn out well, and that they're gonna have that second half resurgence. Well, didn't we say the same thing with some of these good teams in the past, like Sporting KC and TFC? How we say, oh, they're gonna turn around in the second half of the season after they get off to a slow start, and they never did. So I wonder, is this gonna be LAFC turn? And also, I think we kind of said the same thing with Atlanta last season. Although I think Atlanta that one, we could give it a pass because of the fact that they did not have Joseph Martinez, and we knew it was always going to be tough for them to do anything with their most important player not being available. But yeah, there you have it. That is pretty much it for the preview of the last 7 games of the midweek action for match week number 9. Let me know in the comments below, what do you think of this game and also the 6 other games that is going to happen on the other board that I put. And as always, let me know in the comments your prediction for these 7 games that is remaining in match week number 9 in terms of the midweek action. But until then, hope you guys enjoy this video, and I will see you guys next time.